On this prequel episode, we've got our Princess Bride fan poll follow-up. We're learning about dystopian fiction and previewing The Hunger Games. Hello and welcome back to This Film Is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. It's the prequel before the first episode of our 2021 summer series, which is The Hunger Games. It's not a secret anymore. It's not. We announced this quite a while ago at this point. And we'll be talking a little bit more about The Hunger Games here in just a few minutes. But first, we have our normal segments to get to. Before that, including our Patron Shoutouts. We have one new patron this week. Not a new patron, but they are upgrading, so they get a shout-out just the same. And that patron is upgrading to fund Brian's prop fetish. Upgrading from the Hugo Award winner level at $5 to the $15 Academy Award winning level. So thank you, upgrading to fund Brian's prop fetish. I'll buy a prop with it, with that $10. If you stick around for a few months, I'll make sure I'll put aside whatever that $15 for each month, and I'll buy something and I'll post it on our social media, or I'll make something.
Buy something cool.
Yeah, I'll buy a cool prop, or maybe I can get something from The Hunger Games.
Ooh.
I don't know if there's a prop from The Hunger Games that I really like. I already have a pin.
Yeah, we already have a pin. I have the pin, actually. It's on my
I got
purse,
it in a loot crate years ago. I probably even have something. I'm trying to think. It's been so long since I read the books. I don't remember. Obviously, like her bow.
Yeah.
But I have a bow. We have bows now, but it's not. I don't know what hers looks like. I don't know if it's. I don't think her bow is like a particularly distinct prop. It's not like a particularly unique prop, but I could be wrong. Maybe it is. I never saw the later movies, so maybe the later movies she gets like a super cool bow. I don't know. Anyways, we appreciate it. Now let's go ahead and thank our Academy Award winning patrons, as we do every other week. Those that support us for $15 or more over on patreon.com/thisfilmislit, and they are joining the ranks, as we just mentioned, upgrading to fund Brian's prop fetish, Ben Wilcox, Jeff Niederhofer, Winchester's Forever, Kelly Napier, Gray Hightower, Eli Young, Scratch, Just Scratch, Shelby Says Black Lives and Trans Lives Matter, This Film Is Lit is my favorite pod, I Gotta Change This Before OA Records, and Alina Deletkalova. Thank you all so very much. I hope you don't change it before OA Records and they read that and they feel bad. Suck it, opening arguments. Starting a podcast feud. No. Anyways, I am a big fan of opening arguments.
I don't want to
listen
start
every
a
week.
feud with them. They're smarter than me.
Yeah, a lawyer. They have a Harvard educated. He's also a good, bad, or bad's lawyer. So, I mean, I say that. He's on retainer he did all of our paperwork and stuff when we created Good Bad Media. Fantastic podcast. If you want the legal breakdown of the current events that are going on, you can check out Opening Arguments. They're a much larger podcast. They don't need a shout out from us, but either way, highly recommend. They're a little libby, but I enjoy them nonetheless. I am also a little libby, so we'll just leave it at that. Let's go ahead now and see what everybody had to say about The Princess Bride Revisited.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right, so just for transparency's sake, I did cut down a couple comments.
Yes.
Because some of the ones that we got were fairly long. But I think I do have at least something from everybody who commented. So on Patreon, this is our first time posting a poll there. We didn't have any comments, but we did get 4 votes for the movie and 0 for the book.
Yep.
On Facebook, we had 3 votes for the movie and 2 for the book. Ian said, the changes make sense from the book to the film, especially with the actors they cast. I can't quite see Wallace Shawn cutting his palm open, staring her dead eye straight. That's something Danny DeVito might do. Super, super glad they left out the spiders. Screaming tarantulas make my spine freeze.
I don't disagree that I don't think that Vizzini slicing himself. I don't know. I feel like I could still maybe see it. Maybe. but not quite as much.
But I think it's a harder sell.
Yeah, it doesn't fit it with his character
other
as
actors,
much.
yeah.
No, for sure. And I did. Oh yeah, like I said, I also no thank you on the spiders. I mean, they're terrifying, and it would have been creepy and cool, but also no thank you.
I mean, given like the kind of visual direction of the movie, they might have just been kind of silly.
Yeah, they might have been like big, like fuzzy.
Yeah,
yeah, like the ROUSs except spiders. That could have been fun. They might not have been. It would have looked like the giant one that Jenny Nicholson got.
Oh yeah.
You know, like big stuffed spider. Yeah.
And Charlene said, "They're both great in their own ways. The best parts of the book just wouldn't work in a movie, so the movie is better without them, but the book is better for having them. I feel like the book doesn't get enough love, so I'll give it a vote here, but it's so hard to compare."
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is like the interesting thing about this particular adaptation is that she's exactly right. The stuff that they cut from the book is really good in the book, but it wouldn't work in the movie.
No, yeah, it is one of those sort of spot-on adaptations that does a really good job of editing, adding what needs to be added, editing what needs to be edited out for film. And it makes sense because William Goldman is a screenwriter,
yes,
as well as a novelist, so he understands both mediums in a way that that allows him to make that translation.
Yeah, he's kind of uniquely positioned to understand both.
Yeah, whereas some authors that also adapt their books to film don't have that same sort of understanding of writing a screenplay, so it's a little bit tougher for sure.
On Twitter, we had 11 votes for the movie and 0 for the book. Kelly Napier said, "The script is just so tight in the movie. Not a wasted moment, not a lost line anywhere. So I'm picking the movie. The book is too rambling for me."
That was a recurring theme in our notes.
Yeah.
Not that it was rambly necessarily in the book, but that it's just the movie is so exquisitely paced and edited. Not even edited.
It's very
edited
very
in
tight.
the terms of like from the book, cutting dialogue down to the most important lines, the most memorable moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shelby Suderman said, "I think what makes the teeter-totter sword fight in Pirates work better is there's an element of cartoon logic that's just what they would do. In the scene in Princess Bride, they could have just jumped and swung across, but instead they paused to be acrobats for 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's true. And to be fair, I think I did mention, I could be wrong about this, the first time we did this episode, I think I mentioned that it doesn't bother me as much that Inigo jumps and just kind of swings and lands. Mm-hmm. It's Wesley doing like flips that bothers me.
Yeah.
Like that annoys me. And I do agree that even though it's a little silly and cartoony in Pirates when they get on that thing, it just sort of happens and then they just kind of go with it. It's not something they're going out of their way to do. Like from my memory, it's been a while since I watched that scene, but they like end up on it and then like it rolls off the blocks it's on or whatever. And now they're just balancing on it. You know what I mean? Like it's not like they intentionally start fighting on it. Like, you know, at least from my memory.
Yeah,
Again, it's not, it's and that's what Shelby's saying. So yeah, I agree.
And Matt Nelson, large cartoonist at large, said, "Though I love the book, much like Goldman's adaptation of the S. Morgenstern text, I think Goldman's film script is the good parts version of his own book."
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Which is funny. I don't know if you mentioned this. Did we talk about this on the podcast? Yeah.
I tried to borrow the audio book of The Princess Bride from my library. Well, I did borrow it. And I had looked at it when I was like getting on the hold list, and it said it was only 3 hours long.
Yeah, and we're like, man,
and I was like, that's
speed reading it.
Weird,
because it's not a long book, but it's still
it's not a super long book, but it's still
300
like
pages or something.
Yeah, it's more than 3 hours worth of text. But I was like, well, I mean, I guess I'll see.
Yeah,
and then I got it, and it didn't start in the same place that the book started. And I was like, what is happening? And then I was like looking at it and like looking. And I finally realized that the audiobook was the good parts version of the story.
Yes.
Which I take to mean that it was probably only the stuff that happened in the movie.
The movie parts.
Which kind of defeats the purpose of what we were doing.
I thought that was very interesting. While I enjoy... I mean, I guess you could still have a version that... I thought it was really interesting that the audiobook would do that there would be an audiobook version like that, because it seems like the whole point of reading the book would be to get the extra stuff that wasn't in the movie, or at least one of the whole points.
Like for something like The Princess Bride, where the movie is so universally known.
Yeah.
Like I would think that somebody coming into that, like, oh, I didn't know this was a book, or I've never read the book, would want to know audiobook. What's in it that's not in the movie.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's still at least a little bit of that. Clearly there's at least some of it, because it's 3 hours as opposed to an hour and a half. But still, it's just it's interesting to me that they would cut any of it for the audiobook. There probably is an audiobook version that is the whole thing, and you just happen to get an abridged one or whatever. But
it was the only one that my library system had, so I guess they just didn't have an unabridged version.
I have to imagine there's a full version of the audiobook. Would think. But anyways.
On Instagram, we had 17 votes for the movie and 1 for the book. Jedian 9, Jedian.
It's a good name.
Jedian, I like it.
It's a fun name.
Jedian 9 said, "This one is difficult because I really do love them both, and I actually think the book is funnier. But the movie wins out solely due to the perfect cast, the quaint set pieces, the cheesy music, and tiny Fred Savage. It is truly a classic in all senses of the word, and I think it will be a classic until the end of time."
Tiny Fred Savage. Wonder Years
He's
Fred
pretty
Savage.
tiny.
This is before Wonder Years, I think.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that. Sure. I think it's like a year before Wonder Years or something. I think I read that and just didn't make a note of it. I think it's like right before Wonder Years.
He does look quite small sitting in his bed.
Yeah.
Mike Prevet 2019 said, "The movie is wonderful, but the book is better. Reiner's staging and pacing is stiff, leaden at times, but luckily Goldman's script and the actors give the movie some life. And it pains me to say it, but Mark Knopfler's score is one of the worst ever. A nice main theme, but the picture needs a lively lyrical score to support it, but instead has the cheesy, weak synth noodling."
Okay. I assume when they say one of the worst ever, they mean for Mark Knopfler, who has scored quite a few films, and not just period.
I would think so.
I disagree with most of this. First off, the staging, I don't disagree. It's one of the things is it's definitely a movie of its time in terms of cinematography and staging and that sort of thing, and just it's not a particularly gorgeous film in that regard. At times there are moments that work really well, but overall it's not like this stunning masterpiece of cinematography, right? But I don't think it didn't need to be, and it wasn't trying. It's not fooling itself thinking it is or anything like that. I could not possibly agree more with the pacing being, or sorry, I could not possibly disagree more with the comment of the pacing being stiff and leaden. Because this movie, as we discussed, is to me paced so masterfully and moves so well, and we get everything we need. Like we have the first, what is it, like several dozens of pages in the book, if like close to first 100 pages is like the first 5 minutes in the movie, and it works just as well as the first 100 pages of the, in my opinion.
It works beautifully.
Works beautifully. In 5 minutes it does what the book does in almost 100. I don't know how many pages it is, but something like that. And so to me, that I find that kind of interesting. And I also, while the score is a little cheesy, I do agree that the score isn't the strong. I like lots of elements of the score. It's not as like, I think like the Pirates of the Caribbean score is better, like a overall score. Like it's just a more impressive overall score. It's not a big like sweeping score. Yeah, and it doesn't have like the Pirates theme is better than the theme in this, but they at least they did acknowledge that the main theme is strong. It's nice. which is the one everybody remembers anyways. Yeah, that part. And there is a little, the synthiness of it. I can see it would be better.
Of its time.
It's of its time. It'd be really cool to watch this movie, and I'm sure it gets done with a full live orchestra, like they do, like, you know, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and all that stuff, where they have like you watch the movie and then an orchestra does the score live. That would be really cool. To actually hear the whole score done.
Yeah, I would like to experience that. I think that would be
not have the synthy elements of it and just have it orchestrated fully would be cool. So I don't entirely disagree with that part with the score necessarily, but I still like the score a lot.
I disagree with the pacing.
Yeah, that's the one I have the biggest like. I like I said, it's almost the polar opposite opinion for me. But
yeah. I see what they're saying about the staging and the score, but similar to what I talked about with like the set pieces, I think it kind of adds to its charm.
I agree. Yes.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah. Appreciate your input. No, and it's cool that you went to bat for the book.
Yeah.
And provided a differing opinion. And I don't, like I said, I didn't entirely disagree. I think some of your points I actually do agree with, but it's.
We like when people disagree with us.
It's super fun.
It's very interesting. I don't want to say more interesting.
No, that is
I like reading everybody else's comments too.
Yeah.
But it is always interesting when somebody disagrees with us and goes to bat for the other movie.
Yeah, and actually lays out their points and not just like, oh, the movie's dumb or something. Like that's not anything interesting. This is at least a well thought out and interesting comment. So appreciate it.
Tracy D. 1225 said, I read the book for the first time, and I have seen the movie so many times. I think the movie does a great job at trimming things from the book. The movie is such a classic and is a great adaptation. I was happy that a lot of my favorite lines were in the book, though not a fan of Wesley slapping Buttercup. That was off-putting, to say the least.
To say the least.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our final comment, The Leap _77 said, I love Goldman's book. The sarcasm, the abridged style that was so rampant in books when I was growing up, and the eclectic nature of the prose. But I think his vision is better suited for the silver screen, and through a mixture of finding young and experienced talent, creating a sweet and quotable movie for the ages. Come on, was it really a question?
There you go. I would tend to agree. Fantastic. Thank you all so much for all those lovely comments, and for listening and providing feedback and voting, which, Katie, I think it's pretty obvious if people were doing the mental math as we went. But what was the final score on this one?
So the book got absolutely trounced with 3 votes to the movie's 35.
There you go. Pretty solid destruction overall.
I thought The Neverending Story Part 2 was brutal, but this one I really takes the cake.
Which is funny because this is one where neither of them are bad.
Yeah.
You know, like with The Neverending Story Part 2, like the movie's not particularly good, so it makes sense. This one, it's a little, you would think it would be tougher, but the movie is just,
And I didn't think it would, like, I knew the movie was going to win out, but I didn't think it would be by this wide of a margin.
Maybe not quite so much. I actually thought it would be pretty close to that. I was like, it's going to be 10-1 easy. Like, in that ballpark would make sense to me. But cool. All right. Thank you all again so much for commenting and following us on social media so that we can get that feedback and discuss it on these episodes. Now it is time to learn a little bit about dystopian fiction.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
Dystopian fiction is a genre of speculative fiction that explores social and political structures. It's like the textbook definition of it. Dystopian fiction offers a portrayal of a society that is characterized by a focus that is contrary to the author's ethos, whatever the author thinks is good. Okay. Often characterized by elements like mass poverty, public mistrust and suspicion, a police state, oppression. Common elements of dystopian fiction include societies engaged in forever wars and characterized by extreme social and economic class divides, mass poverty, environmental devastation, anarchy, and extreme social control, corporate, religious, technological, bureaucratic, reproductive, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
For example, on that last kind of point, Orwell's 1984 illustrates extreme social control, while McCarthy's The Road explores anarchy. Some dystopian worlds do have elements of both.
And you're using anarchy in a more colloquial sense here, as opposed to the more... I just don't, we may get letters from, there may be anarchists who listen to, anarchy is an actual political movement that has tenets or elements to it that are not quite as simplistic as like the colloquial understanding of quote unquote anarchy and what that means. I just wanted to clarify.
Anarchy more in the sense of like a lack of social structure.
Yes, like a complete dissolution of any sort of, societal structure, which... anarchists, modern anarchists, I don't think necessarily fall into that camp. I don't know enough about it to comment necessarily. I just wanted to clarify.
If we have any anarchists listening, we're not coming for you.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify.
We're just talking about a lack of social, what's the word I'm looking for? Cohesion, social structure. Yeah, any of that stuff. Something like The Road, or, take your pick of like zombie dystopias where everything just falls apart.
And there's like seemingly no, and it depends on your, because I was gonna say Mad Max and then I thought about it and I'd say that maybe doesn't count because that's almost, at least from like something like Fury Road, is more of like a feudalistic type almost
I feel like
organization of the.
I feel like Mad Max you could almost say is something that has elements of both.
Yeah,
because I think there is definitely more of an element of like a feudalistic, like socially controlled system.
Yeah.
But there's also elements of like a lack of that.
Yeah.
Like where you're just like out in the wilds.
Yeah. It's anyways. I just wanted to make that note.
Most authors of dystopian fiction explore at least one reason why things are that way, often as an analogy for similar issues in the real world, so these stories can also be read as political warnings or cautionary tales. Dystopian fiction emerged as a response to utopian fiction. Utopian fiction portrays a setting that agrees with the author's ethos, having various attributes of another reality that's intended to appeal to readers, first used in direct context by Sir Thomas More in his 1516 work, Utopia. The word utopia resembles the Greek words for both good place and no place, which is a reference to the idea that no such place could actually exist. No such thing as a utopia.
Real quick, you said dystopian fiction emerges and as a response to utopian fiction. I wonder how, I guess it depends on how specifically you categorize those things. And I know you're going to get into that at least a little bit more here in a second, but I would categorize, and I just did a quick glance to see that you didn't have this.
Well, I don't have it because I couldn't find a lot about it because it is kind of a...
No, I meant have this specific thing I'm thinking of, which would be very old dystopian fiction.
Okay, go ahead.
Exodus. Does that not specifically?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, it ticks most of the boxes of what would be considered dystopian fiction. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And even to somebody who's a Christian, it's something that hasn't happened. You know what I mean? So it's still like even if you don't view the Bible as fiction, it's still something that I think the Exodus itself would be kind of considered fiction, at least if not prophetic fiction, whatever. And so I wonder, like, how far you can go back and say, okay, this is the first piece of utopian fiction versus
I think we maybe
fiction.
And the part of the reason that I didn't go more into like the history of it is because it's nebulous.
Yes.
So it's hard to like, well, what do we categorize as dystopian specifically? But we definitely see examples that we would consider like recognizable as quote unquote modern dystopian fiction following the advent of utopian fiction. But I agree, and I think it's a similar issue that we had with when we talked about spy fiction.
I said Exodus, by the way. I didn't mean Exodus. I meant I just what's the last book? It's not
Revelations.
Revelations. My bad. I'm realizing now people are going to be like Exodus. Sorry. Revelation.
I didn't even miss a beat because the first thing I thought was like the plagues on Egypt, and
that
was
also
like,
I guess kind of makes sense. But that was also supposed to be a historical, like at the time it was written, that was recounting events.
Yeah, it was
whereas
recounting events.
I'm sorry. Yes, Revelation being dystopian.
Yeah,
that
I think you could make an argument for it.
Yeah, sorry.
But
it's gonna be real confusing to people for a second until we get to this part where I clarify.
But yeah, I think it's just a similar issue of like, well, what do you actually categorize as this genre? And I think for our purposes in offering like a brief overview of what this is, I generally choose to focus on like, okay, this is something that we're going to recognize as fitting with what we think of as that genre now.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I just thought it was interesting because I was thinking about it. I was like, I wonder what the first is. I was like, well, Revelations seems like it would be fit into most of the categories.
I'm sure you could find a lot of examples in various mythologies.
Yes, and I'm sure it goes back even further than that.
I mean,
probably.
most mythologies have stories about, there's Revelations in the Bible, there's Ragnarok in Norse mythology, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, the end days.
Right. Which are similar, which are probably the precursors to what we would consider modern dystopian.
I don't think it's too far off.
Yeah.
I think a dystopia more specifically focuses on commenting on current issues.
Yeah.
Whereas I can't say for sure if any of the older stuff was commenting on current issues.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. I don't know. This is interesting. I'm sure there's writing on Revelation sure as dystopian fiction. I'm sure there's...
And if there's not, get after it, academics.
Yeah.
Sometimes works will combine elements of dystopias and utopias. That's part of the reason that I wanted to bring up utopias, because these two kind of opposites go hand in hand, right? They're like mirror images of each other. So we might have a story that has an observer from our world journey to another place or time and maybe see one society that the author considers ideal and another representing the worst possible outcome, as in H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. Another model might be having a utopia be invaded by a dystopian society, as in Aldous Huxley's Island. Another literary model, the imagined society might journey between elements of utopia and dystopia over the course of the novel or the film. Lois Lowry's The Giver portrays a society that presents as utopian only for the curtain to drop and the dystopian underpinnings to be revealed.
I was going to ask if that seems like a specific own niche genre of dystopian fiction where it's like, surprise, this utopia is actually a dystopia. That's a very common.
Have you ever read The Giver?
No, I have not actually.
Creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
I heard the movie was not very good. Someday we'll have to do that.
It's got Jeff Bridges in it.
It also has Taylor Swift in it.
Does it?
I think so.
She didn't just do a song for it?
About that.
All right.
Dystopian fiction most frequently takes place in our world in the near future, but it doesn't necessarily have to. The important thing with dystopian fiction is the message. Of dystopian fiction, Margaret Atwood, author of The Handmaid's Tale, says, while not all...
What does she know about it? Sorry.
I mean, The Handmaid's Tale, one of several dystopias that she wrote.
Yeah.
While not all allegories are dystopias, dystopias are almost always allegories. Allegories are stories that comment on and criticize contemporary events, people, policies, etc. The purpose of dystopian fiction as allegory is to serve as a warning about how things could go wrong if we don't change.
Yes.
So I thought it might be fun for us to give a few of our favorite dystopian properties.
Yep.
I really like The Power.
I have not read it.
Naomi Alderman.
I've been wanting to read it.
Loved that book.
Yeah.
Highly recommend.
They did an episode of it on Philosophers in Space. Really good episode. And they had... did they have? No. Anyways, they did a really good episode on Philosophers in Space about The Power. You can go check that out. But yeah, I've heard it's great. I have wanted to read it and never got around to it yet.
I also really like The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley is one of my favorites. Way better than 1984, in my opinion. Come at me, Orwell stands. Mad Max Fury Road, I really enjoy. Firefly, Dark Matter. I also really liked The Walking Dead up to a certain point. The TV show, I never read any of the comics.
Yeah.
And I would also argue that Avatar: The Last Airbender has some qualities of dystopian fiction, most notably in its portrayal of the Earth Kingdom, which is a little more like on the nose, but also in the idea of the Forever War. Yeah,
the Forever War, and
there's a lot of like propagandizing throughout that show. It really explores that kind of element of war.
And the Air Kingdom is like this long lost destroy, like it
got wiped off the face of the earth by the Forever War.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I think it's So some of my favorites definitely tie in. I really enjoyed Brave New World when you had me read that. It's one of those books for however I did it, avoided reading in high school or college or anything. But I really enjoyed that. Mad Max was one of the first ones. Fury Road specifically was one of the first ones that jumped to my mind, to the top of my list. I also had Firefly. Dark Matter, I guess it is. I just didn't think about it in that regard. It's just, to me, it was just more generic sci-fi. But you're right. It totally fits. I don't think I'd put Walking Dead on my list, even though I did enjoy it for a while. The other ones I had were Children of Men, which is a fantastic film. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I think it holds up still, but I saw it several times around the time it came out, and I don't think it's based on a book, so we may just have to watch it sometime. I don't think we could do it for the podcast, but I could be wrong. It might be. I don't actually know. But Children of Men, really good. It's about a dystopian future where nobody has babies anymore, and spoiler, they find somebody who's having a baby, and it's about
everybody loses their minds.
Yeah, kind of. But it's really incredible film. It has some fantastic cinematography and just crazy action sequences and set pieces. Super cool. Another one that was probably the top of my list is Snowpiercer.
I thought you might have that one. Yeah.
I haven't seen the show. I've heard the show's good. I just haven't watched it. But I love the movie. I think it's fantastic. It's a little on the nose compared to some of these things, which are none of them are like particularly super subtle. But Snowpiercer in particular is like really on the nose with its symbolism of everybody on the train.
You mean literally climbing the social ladder?
Yeah, fighting through the different levels of society. Yeah, it's on the nose, but I do really enjoy it. Chris Evans is great in it, and it's a super fun action movie that also has a lot of cool sort of social commentary. And then the last one I just thought about and added was a video game. Two video games. The BioShock series. BioShock and BioShock Infinite are the two I've played. I think there's some other middle one or something that I never played, but those are the two main ones, and they both take place. They're both based on, or at least the first one specifically is based on Atlas Shrugged a little bit. But it's about a society. You end up in the first one. You end up in this underwater society that split off and went to go form their perfect ANCAP like libertarian utopia, and then it descended into chaos, and you're there after everything has kind of been destroyed.
Cool.
Very similarly in the sequel BioShock Infinite, it's a city that takes place or that is it's like a sky city. It's like a flying sky city. And in that one, it's about it's been a while since I played it, but the society up there like worships the founding fathers as like gods, as like mythical god figures. It's also very similar, like criticizing, commenting on like right wing ideology. Both really good games. At least again, it's been years since I played them. I don't know if the story holds up perfectly, but I enjoyed them at the time, and they have a lot to say about. And the ending of BioShock Infinite is real trippy and cool. It brings in some interesting like sci-fi almost elements into it, and like metaphysical. I don't want to spoil it because it's super cool. But those are both dystopian video games there's a million dystopian. The Mad Max video game's actually pretty fun. They made one around the time Fury Road came out. But yeah. Anyways. Oh, you know another really cool dystopian video game I just thought of? I didn't play a ton of it, but I played it for a while. It's called, and I don't even know if it's necessarily dystopian, but I think it counts. The ones it's about, oh gosh, what is it called? It's a war. You're in a war-torn, like post-apocalyptic war-torn country, and it's like a survival game where you're like it's a 2D game, and you're in a house. There's The Little Ones is the sequel. What is it called? This War of Mine is what it's called. And you're just in a bombed out house in a bombed out war torn city, and it's all people trying to survive. And it's like you like go out every night and try to like scrounge for supplies, and then you occasionally will run into other people and have to fight them. And it's just this really bleak, terrible, like you ultimately just die eventually because it's like impossible to survive, and that's kind of the point. But it's this weird, bleak commentary on war and never ending, like the destruction that has taken place because of this war that happened. And it's really good fun. I say fun. It's an interesting video game. If you like survival and like collecting games and that sort of stuff where you have to like build up your base, I would recommend checking out This War of Mine. It's on PS4. It was free for a while. I got it for free, but it's on I think most systems. Anyways, that was my list. Sorry. I rambled on when I thought of another one.
I want to go back real quick to what you said about dark matter, that you didn't think of it as dystopian and just more generically as sci-fi. Because I just want to point out
it's possible I may have forgotten the impetus of the story, but go ahead.
I just want to point out that there is a ton of overlap.
Okay.
Like a lot of dystopian fiction is essentially sci-fi.
Fair enough.
Because it's speculative.
Yes.
And sci-fi is nothing if not speculative. And a lot of dystopian fiction, within the last century or so has been based on technology.
Yeah. I think it is fair because it's very similar to Firefly from my memory in the sense of like, the reason I think Firefly would qualify is there was the Civil War and now essentially a fascistic government now controls the most of the galaxy or whatever, and so I would think I would agree that it kind of exists within a dystopian framework. And I think from my memory, dark matter is similar. I guess in my head, I wasn't thinking dark matter in that way because the primary story we're confronted with in dark matter is like the mystery of like who they are. And like, I wasn't considering so much like the universe it takes place in.
Definitely less dystopian than some other examples. But yeah, I think when you think about like the universe that it takes place in, and some of the like subplot elements, like there's the subplot with 2, I think, where she's like a she's
a weapon.
Yeah, she's like a bioengineered weapon who's trying to like achieve her independence.
Right.
And like separate herself from her creator.
No, it's definitely. I think it's definitely fair. I think it does work. It's just funny because, like I said, I just didn't think of it. Now we should rewatch Dark Matter.
Yeah, we should.
It's been a while, and I don't remember like much about it. And we have sci-fi. We have the sci-fi app, so we can do that now. It was also on Netflix for a while. I don't know. It's probably on the sci-fi app now. Anyways, cool.
All right. So we want to know, what are some of your favorite dystopian properties?
Yeah.
Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon if you follow us there.
Yeah.
Wherever.
Comment on this episode's post. Tell us your favorite dystopian fiction that we didn't mention, because there's a billion of them. And,
yes.
Yeah, we didn't even scratch the surface.
No, there were 4 different sub lists on Wikipedia that I kind of scrolled through, and I was like, half the stuff on them, I was like, I wouldn't have even thought of that. Like the Lego movie.
Yeah.
But it is.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure is. Absolutely.
I was astonished
before I read the second
movie had to say.
Before I read the second and third one, I would probably have put Hunger Games on my list. And we'll see. I may add it back.
Maybe.
Once we finish it this time. That may change. All right, speaking of the Hunger Games, it's time to find out a little bit about the Hunger Games, the novel.
Welcome, welcome. The time has come to select one courageous young man and woman for the honor of representing District 12 in the 74th Annual Hunger Games.
It's your first year, Prim. Your name's only been in there once. They're not gonna pick you.
Primrose Everdeen.
Prim! I volunteer! I volunteer as tribute!
The Hunger Games is a 2008 dystopian young adult novel by American writer Suzanne Collins. The novel is the first in the Hunger Games trilogy, followed by Catching Fire in 2009 and Mockingjay in 2010. After an initial print of 200,000, the book had sold 800,000 copies by February of 2010. Not too shabby. Since its release, The Hunger Games has also been translated into 26 different languages. Also not too shabby. Collins has said that the inspiration for The Hunger Games came from channel surfing on TV. On one channel, she saw people competing on a reality show, and on another, she saw footage of the invasion of Iraq. The two, quote, began to blur in this very unsettling way, and the idea for the book was formed.
I was just going to mention something, and then I scrolled down and saw a note about it later, so you're going to address it.
All right. The sense of loss that Collins developed through her father's service in the Vietnam War was also an influence on the story, with Katniss having lost her father at age 11, 5 years before the book begins. In an interview, Collins noted that the novel, quote, tackles issues like severe poverty, starvation, oppression, and the effects of war, among others. On the subject of the game's parallels with popular culture, Darren Franich of Entertainment Weekly writes that the book, quote, is an incisive satire of reality television shows, and that the character of Cinna almost seems like a contestant on a fascist version of Project Runway, using Katniss's outfits as a vehicle to express potentially dangerous ideas.
You haven't got the Cinna yet, probably, have you?
No, I've met Cinna.
You just,
yeah.
Okay, where you were the other day, you wouldn't have, but you got there.
Yeah, I got there.
Played by Lenny Kravitz in the movie. I remember enjoying that a lot about the movie when I watched it the first time.
The Hunger Games has received critical acclaim. In an interview for the New York Times, John Green wrote that the novel was brilliantly plotted and perfectly paced, and that the considerable length of the novel comes in Collins' convincingly detailed world building and her memorably complex and fascinating heroine.
The considerable strength of the novel. You said length.
Oh.
The considerable strength of the novel. Yeah.
Considerable strength of the novel. Okay.
Yeah.
However, he also noted that while allegorically rich, the book sometimes does not realize the allegorical potential that the plot has to offer, and that the writing described the action and little else.
Is that the John Green?
I
of
believe
Hank and John
so.
Green fame?
Yeah.
Like one of those brothers?
I believe so.
I didn't know he reviewed books for New York Times. He does those fuckers do everything.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, they do. And also, when you're like a best-selling young adult novelist, you get to do that.
You get to do whatever you want, yeah.
Elizabeth Bird of School Library Journal praised the novel, saying it is exciting, poignant, thoughtful, and breathtaking by turns, and called it one of the best books of 2008. Rick Riordan, author of the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, claims it is the closest thing to the perfect adventure novel he has ever read. And I had to include this. Stephanie Meyer endorsed the book on her website, saying, "I was so obsessed with this book. The Hunger Games is amazing."
There you go. That was both track. I can see, because I will say this about the Hunger Games. I think it really does. It's one of those crossover hits where if you want to dig into it for a deeper, more interesting, again, there's a lot of political commentary and social commentary and stuff going on in the Hunger Games that you can enjoy, but you can also just like read it as like like a crazy like adventure, war. There's no war specifically in this one, but it's like a zany sci-fi, not zany, I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but like this like sort of outlandish setting and contrivance for the story. If you don't think about like what it's saying, if you're just like, wow, this is wild. These people get picked to go fight to death in a ring. These kids do.
I'm like 6 chapters in, and I feel like you would have to be really obtuse.
I'm saying,
but
I agree, but you could just, I think it still just works on a base level. Like, the writing is compelling enough on its own that you can just enjoy it without thinking too much about it. As a story, without considering. I mean, again, you'd have to be like trying not to pick up on the messaging, but still.
And my last note here, similarities of the Hunger Games to
this is the one I
Koshun.
Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce
Takami's 1999 novel Battle Royale have been noted.
Yeah.
Collins has stated that she had never heard of that book or that author until my book was turned in. Susan Dominus of the New York Times reported that the parallels are striking enough that Collins' work has been savaged on the blogosphere as a bald-faced ripoff of Battle Royale, but argued that there are enough possible sources for the plotline that the two authors might well have hit on the same basic setup independently.
I have not read or seen, there's a movie also based on Battle Royale, and I've not seen or read. And I remember originally finding that out and being like, wow, and reading like the synopsis of Battle Royale on like Wikipedia or whatever, and thinking it did seem rather compelling that she had pulled some inspiration. But in retrospect, again, having not read Battle Royale, the idea isn't that like,
I mean, I think the basic concept isn't that, like, I could see how you could hit on that without, especially, and like, she mentioned that,
I mean, gladiatorial games have existed forever.
Yeah, and I saw other
once
notes
you hit
about
gladiatorial, once you're like, okay,
from that.
Gladiatorial games, I'm going to do that, and there's a government that makes kids do gladiatorial. That's not that like outlandish of a leap to like come up with.
No, and I mentioned earlier that this idea that she was like channel surfing between reality TV and the invasion of Iraq, which, I'm assuming she was writing this during the early to mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And buddy, I don't know how well we all remember, but reality TV during that time period was wild.
Yeah.
It was a lawless wasteland out there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, so, I don't think it's that much of a stretch to have been looking at what the offerings were at that time and to hit on this idea.
Yeah. And now there may be specific details that make it more damning or less. I don't know. There may be some like, weird little details that it's like, okay, well, how does that,
right? How
do these two things match up and you didn't? Okay. But I don't know about that. So I haven't looked at, but just the broad premise, and sort of the, some of the broad strokes of it, it doesn't strike me as outlandish that just two people would just come up with that idea like on their own. It's not that weird to me. All right, let's go ahead now and learn a little bit about The Hunger Games, the film.
And so it was decreed that each year the 12 districts of Pan Am shall offer up in tribute one young man and woman between the ages of 12 and 18 to be trained in the art of survival and to be prepared to fight to the death.
This is the time to show them everything. Make sure they remember you.
I just keep wishing I could think of a way to show them that they don't own me. If I'm gonna die, I want to still be me.
I just can't afford to think like that.
The Hunger Games is a 2012 film directed by Gary Ross, known for Pleasantville, Ocean's 8, and Seabiscuit, and written by Gary Ross, Suzanne Collins, which, this is fun, I didn't know this. She wrote for TV shows, including Little Bear and 3 episodes of Clarissa Explains It All.
Interesting.
And Billy Ray, who wrote on Captain Phillips, Richard Jewell, and Flight Plan.
That makes me want, like, an SNL-style parody called Katniss Explains It All.
Katniss Explains... Yeah, that could be fun. Yeah, she, like, stops and talks to the camera. Yeah. The film stars Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Liam Hemsworth, Woody Harrelson, Elizabeth Banks, Lenny Kravitz, Stanley Tucci, Donald Sutherland, Wes Bentley, Toby Jones, Amanda Stenberg, and Willow Shields. The film has an 84% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 68% on Metacritic and a 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb. It was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Song, that Taylor Swift, she wrote like a song for it. And it was nominated for a Hugo for Best Dramatic Presentation Long Form, which I believe is what something we just did one recently. I mentioned not Radio Free Album. There was what are recent things we did? My mind is blanking completely. There was something that we did recently. Oh, Princess Bride.
Oh,
literally the last episode won a Hugo for like best. Won a Hugo award. I'm pretty sure. And it was also nominated for and won a ton of like children and teen awards, like MTV. Like,
I mean, this was big.
Oh, it was huge.
Yeah,
but it didn't get any Academy Award nominations, and it only got 1 Golden Globe, and it was for a song. So it wasn't, because a lot of times sometimes big movies like this will get a couple like technical
little nods or something,
couple little awards at the Academy Awards or something, but not this first one. I don't think any of them did, but I don't know. In March 2009, Lionsgate entered into an agreement to produce the movie along with Color Force, who had acquired worldwide distribution rights to the novel. Lionsgate paid $200,000 in order to purchase the rights to produce the film. And then they went all in. They raided their budgets and they sold a bunch of assets to secure $88 million for the budget for this movie. Suzanne Collins, as we mentioned, adapted the screenplay herself in collaboration with Billy Ray and Gary Ross. And this is interesting. One major decision that they made early on was to expand Seneca Crane's role and the Game Center's role in the film. So Seneca Crane is not actually in the first book. He's not mentioned in the first book. Or he might be mentioned maybe once, but I think I read that he's not mentioned. He's actually...
okay. I was going to say I haven't gotten to that character yet, but I guess I wouldn't.
He's not in it. He's in it. He's mentioned in the second book in like retrospect about the first book, and they decided to take his character, which is alluded to in the second book, as playing a role in the first book, but we never see it because it's all from a first-person perspective.
Right.
They move it. We actually get stuff. He's the game master. He's the person who controls the Hunger Games.
Oh, okay.
And so we actually see stuff from his perspective. They decided to expand his role and the Game Center's role in the film. That way, in the book, we're listening to Katniss sort of speculate about what they're doing during the games. Right. And they thought that it would make more sense in the movie to just show what was happening in the Game Center. So
I think that does make more sense.
Yeah. So this is going to be interesting. Roughly 30 actresses auditioned for the role of Katniss Everdeen. Katie, before we reveal these, I would like you to guess at least a couple tries at who else you think may have auditioned for the role before it went to Jennifer Lawrence.
Probably not, because she was busy with another young adult franchise, but I mean Kristen Stewart
Kristen Stewart, okay.
A big name at the time.
Big name, but yeah, a little busy.
A little busy. Anna Kendrick.
Anna Kendrick.
Coming off of
also a little
Twilight.
A little less busy.
Yeah, a little less busy.
A little less busy.
Gosh, who was even popular at this time? Emily Browning?
Ooh, interesting.
I love her.
Okay.
I want her to be in more stuff. I'll throw a shot in the dark and say Taylor Swift auditioned for it.
Auditioned and has landed with the backup role of doing a song for it.
See, everybody I'm thinking of, I feel like is maybe too old, but it's Hollywood, so maybe not. Zoe Deschanel? I don't know.
Oh, that's really interesting. That would be fun.
Are any of these even
Zoe
on
Deschanel.
this list?
I don't remember. I know. I think you got it at one. I think you got one. Do you want to speculate at which one you got right? Because you got one for sure. I remember. Because I had this blacked out, so now I have to go in here and highlight it and reveal it for myself so that I can see it. Okay. So, the one you got was Emily Browning.
Nice.
She did audition. The other people, Haley Steinfeld,
Okay.
Abigail Breslin,
Okay.
Emma Roberts.
Oh, I didn't even think of her. That makes perfect sense.
This next one will make a lot of sense. Saoirse Ronan.
Oh, yeah.
This is right around the time that, or right before or after the guest or whatever. Not the guest. Whatever that other Stephanie Meyer book was.
Oh, The Host.
The Host, not the guest.
The Guest.
Chloe Grace Moretz.
Okay, yeah.
Jodelle Ferland, speaking of Dark Matter, she plays 5 or whatever in Dark Matter. Lindsay Fonseca, who I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah,
Emily Browning. Shailene Woodley.
Okay.
I don't know who this next person is, or actually I don't know who these last two people are. Kea Scalario and Troyan Belisario.
Troyan Belisario, I believe, was on Pretty Little Liars.
I did look that up. I don't know who Kayla Scalario is.
Yeah, I don't know her off the top of my head.
She was from Pretty Little Liars, but yeah, Emily Browning, you nailed. I thought you might have landed on Saoirse Ronan. I thought that was the other one, or Emma Roberts. Those are the two. I was like, yeah, you might hit one of those.
I was like trying to think of actresses, and all I could think of were like slightly too old actresses,
like Emma Stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was like Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, director Carrie Ross described Jennifer Lawrence, like I said, they did eventually land on Jennifer Lawrence, described her as having, quote, an incredible amount of self-assuredness. You get the sense that the girl knew exactly who she was, and when she came in and read for me, and it just knocked me out. I've never seen an audition like that before in my life. It was one of those things where you just glimpse your whole movie in front of you. Jennifer Lawrence was 20 at the time when filming began, so a little too old for the role because Katniss Everdeen is 16 in the book. But Suzanne Collins said that she felt that this worked for the role because the role needed, quote, a certain maturity and power, and would prefer the actress actually be older than the role as opposed to younger. Going on to say that Lawrence had, quote, every essential quality necessary to play Katniss. And from my memory of seeing the films, I would agree with that. I thought she was pretty much a spot, or from seeing the first movie. I don't know why I never watched. I think I didn't watch any of the sequels because I didn't like the books that much.
Yeah.
Because I did really enjoy the first book, and I remember thinking the movie did pretty. Like, I remember being like, yeah, it was a pretty good adaptation. Like, especially because that was at a time back then, too, when I was, like, not as good at understanding how films were adapted. You know what I mean? Like, where I was
not
much
as generous.
Not as generous. I was much more in the camp of, it's not the same as the book.
Yeah.
Like that kind of, yeah. So, other options for Peeta Mellark included Alexander Ludwig, which is interesting, random coincidence. He's Bjorn in Vikings, show we're watching currently. He's also in The Hunger Games. He plays Kato, which is one of the like District 1 or District 2 or one of the big...
Oh, he's in this movie as a different character.
Yes, okay. he auditioned for Peeta, didn't get the role, but they ended up getting Kato, who's one of the... He's one of the guys from one of the districts where he like volunteer, like one of the big like rich districts or whatever. Hunter Parrish, Lucas Till, and Evan Peters. Other Gale hopefuls other than Liam Hemsworth, who we landed on, were David Henry, Drew Roy, and Robbie Amell. I don't know who those first two are, but Robbie Amell
David Henry, I believe, was on Wizards of Waverly Place.
Okay.
And I feel like he's a little nerdy to be Gale.
Okay. At one point, Haymitch, who is the coach or whatever, the past winner from District 12, played by Woody Harrelson in the film. At one point, John C. Reilly was in talks to play Haymitch, which I could see. I could see it working. I think Woody Harrelson makes more sense, but I could see John C. Reilly. John C. Reilly's a little too silly.
Yeah.
Woody Harrelson has a little more he's just a little darker.
He has an air of, like, he's kind of silly. Yeah. But he also has an air of
turmoil and darkness to him that
almost menace, but not quite.
Yeah. And I don't want to say John C. Reilly can't do that, because I'm sure he can. I know he's done it in movies, but yeah, Woody Harrelson feels real spot on for Haymitch. So this is random but fun. All three of the main the love triangle, for lack of a better phrase, Peeta, Katniss, and Gale, all dyed their hair for the film. And this is funny. Liam Hemsworth and Jennifer Lawrence both have blonde hair naturally and had to dye their hair brown. And Josh Hutcherson has brown hair naturally and had to dye his hair blonde. So there you go.
Rip everyone's hair.
Yeah. Jennifer Lawrence trained for 6 weeks to learn archery, rock and tree climbing, combat, and parkour.
Nice.
For the film. The movie was filmed in North Carolina over the course of about 4 months, from May 2011 to September of 2011. And this is a really random fact that I had no idea. Steven Soderbergh served as the second unit director, and he filmed most of the District 11 riot scene, which happens towards the end. Or in the middle end-ish of the book. And I thought it was really interesting that Steven Soderbergh would be a second unit director. He's done Ocean's 11 at this point. This is around the same time.
Very heavy hitter to be the second unit director.
This is almost the exact same time he was doing the movie we did, Contagion. He did Contagion, and this is that was 2010, right? Or 2011 or something. It was right around the same time. It was really interesting.
Maybe he was in the area.
Maybe they filmed Contagion in North Carolina or something. It was very strange that he would bring in, because he's a much bigger name than Gary Ross is. I don't know. It's wild to me. Maybe he just really liked the book and was like, and I can't do the whole movie, but you want me to do, I'll direct something. So for the District 12 setting, it's a poor mining town in the book. They actually used a real poor mining town in North Carolina called Henry River Mill Village. Well, an abandoned mill town, not mining town. It's an abandoned mining or mill town that was originally built in 1905 as a planned community. It actually had a company store, which, if you know anything about the history of company stores, ties in very well to sort of the dystopic nature of the District 12. Company stores is a place where you essentially, in these towns that had company stores, everybody in the town worked for the company, and the company also owned the store, and so you essentially, they controlled the prices for the products, and they controlled how much they were paying you. So they essentially controlled your entire life, just this one company, whoever you're working for. Go read about company stores and company towns and mining towns and all that. It's terrifying and horrible. But this is also now a tourist destination. You can actually go visit Henry River Mill Village, and it's primarily a tourist destination because of the Hunger Games.
Right.
It has a remodeled cabin that you can rent for $300 a night and stay. It's it's very funny because it's this, the whole town is this rundown, turn of the century, mill town. And all the buildings look like they did in the Hunger Games, kind of falling apart. And then there's this one, it looks like an Airbnb, it's... Yeah. The pictures on the inside, it's got rustic steel clawfoot tub, and it just looks like every Airbnb listing ever. But also, it's a wedding venue.
Babe,
we could get married in District 12.
we could have a Hunger Games wedding.
Yes, and at the end of the ceremony, they say Marion's be everyone. It's perfect. It makes perfect sense. This is random but funny. So now we're entering the IMDb facts, but I got to run down a couple of them because I thought they were funny. There was a swear jar on set, apparently, and Jennifer Lawrence contributed the most amount of money to it. So good for her. While horsing around on set one day, apparently Jennifer Lawrence accidentally kicked Josh Hutcherson in the head and knocked him out and gave him a concussion.
That sounds like good casting.
Yep, spot on. Donald Sutherland apparently lobbied hard for the role of the president after he read the script, and apparently he wasn't supposed to read the script. It somehow ended up on his desk or something, and he just read it, and it reminded him of Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory, and he wrote a letter to Gary Ross pleading with him that he should be cast as the president, and was.
I feel like you don't turn down Donald Sutherland if he wants to be in your movie.
Absolutely not. So the 4-note melody that Katniss uses as her signal with Rue and that plays through all the songs in the trailers is G, B flat, A, and D. For you music
That's
people out there.
That's like the Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Or the Mockingjay
or whatever
whistle.
whatever that
Oh,
whistle
that was
is.
really good, babe. Good job.
Was that it? I don't remember.
Yeah,
I actually haven't
so.
watched the trailer. It's in a while. I was just going off memory. I think it is that, but
I can barely whistle, so
I think those are the notes.
Yeah.
G, B flat, A, D. Yeah.
That's pretty dang close.
Pretty close. Co-writer and director Gary Ross has stated that his decision to go with the shaky cam, which is a big part of the thing some people complained about quite a bit because it's a very shaky cam. And we talked about shaky cam in the Bourne movie. It's not quite as effective here, but he did have at least a reason for choosing to go with shaky cam. One, he said it had a lot to do with the urgency of what's going on and to reflect Katniss's point of view being thrust into this chaotic situation. But he also mentioned that he wanted to avoid a polished static camera look because he thought that this would reduce the violence to entertainment, and that was completely contrary to the movie's intention. He didn't want the violence to be spectacle. He wanted it to be this horrible, again, chaotic thing, which makes a lot of sense because that's kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
And so doing it as a spectacle, although I think you still could do that. There's a way maybe to do it as spectacle and then
also
hold the mirror up to the audience and go, look, you're them. You're
the spectator.
Maybe, but at the same time you can still critique it from the sense of but you're still doing the spectacle. So I it's tough to do. I think this is probably the way that makes the most sense to go about doing it. It's just the point is that this is terrible. So let's not make it into an entertaining spectacle. So this is really random, but really funny. This is the second movie in 2 years. Winter's Bone came out in 2010, in which Jennifer Lawrence plays a character who feeds her destitute family a squirrel.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Random, but fun.
Isn't Winter's Bone set here in our home state?
Is it?
I
actually don't know. I've never seen it. I don't really know anything about it other than she was nominated for an Oscar or something for it.
I'm pretty sure. I think
or
it's
won the Oscar, maybe? I don't know.
I think she did win. I think it's in the Ozarks, maybe, but
I think it might be the Ozarks. I think you're right. So Willem Scream check. There's a Willem Scream that you can look out for as you're watching the film. At one point, Katniss cuts off a tree branch and a nest of tracker jackers fall onto some of the people, and there's a Willem Scream there, so look out for that.
Real quick, Winter's Bone is set in the rural Ozarks of Missouri.
There you go. Just a mere few hours where I used to vacation as a boy. Yes. So the film would ultimately earn $408 million US, $694 million worldwide, which makes it the 22nd highest grossing film of all time, I believe, or at least at the time. And this is really interesting. It was the first film not released by a Big Six studio, and the Big Six studios are 20th Century Fox, Disney, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Columbia, or Universal. First film not released by one of those to gross over $400 million. Wow. So Lionsgate really, when they went to the budget slashing and the asset rating, they really made the right call on that one. This is funny. I had to include, so I got a couple reviews. And one of them that I thought was funny, just because I'll just read it. Justin Craig of Fox News rated the film as excellent and stated, "Move over, Harry Potter. A darker, more mature franchise has come to claim your throne." Which is, boy, that person deserves to be writing for Fox News. That's all I'm going to say about that review. But
I feel like we're working off of the erroneous idea that fantasy can't be mature.
Yeah.
here.
Well, and just also, I don't know. Everything about that sentence makes my eyes roll into my head. Move over, Harry Potter.
I also feel like Twilight is the more topical thing to compare it to at the time, but whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, the last Harry Potter movie came out in 2011-ish, 2012, something like that.
I mean, sure, but Twilight was also coming out at that time.
Yeah.
And to me, Twilight is the more apt comparison because of the love triangle aspect.
Yeah.
But whatever.
And then finally, I always love to include my Roger Ebert reviews. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, praising the movie as, quote, effective entertainment. And he also praised Lawrence's performance but despite his largely positive review, he went on to criticize the film for being, quote, too long, and noted that the film misses opportunities for social criticism. So we'll have to see.
Did he not see the shaky cam?
I don't know if he knew the reason behind the shaky cam. And there's a chance that maybe it does miss some chance. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, the social criticism so far, I'm 5 chapters into rereading the first book, and the social criticism is inherent in the text. Like, it's not, it doesn't, so far, it's not going out of its way to, like, say critical things, but it's very obvious what the criticism is. And it's, like, okay. It's just interesting to me that maybe the movie just less so, but who knows? We'll get there when we get there. Where can you watch The Hunger Games? As always, check your local library, or if you have a local video rental store, check with them. You can stream it with ads on the Roku channel or Pluto TV, or you can stream it with a subscription on TNT, TBS, Spectrum TV, or True TV. So I assume those are all cable networks, or well, Spectrum is a cable provider. If you have a cable provider or Dish or something, you can probably get it through one of those.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like to me.
Through one of those networks. Or you can rent it for $2 to $4 on Redbox, Apple TV, Amazon, YouTube, Vudu, DirecTV, AMC Theater On Demand, or Alamo On Demand. Alamo Drafthouse has their own streaming service. I assume that's what Alamo On Demand is. Unless the Alamo.
Well, when I set up, because I've been using that Next Watch app, and when I set it up, I just selected all of the things.
There you go.
Instead of selecting, like, the things that I have, like a normal human.
Right. Yeah. All right. That's it for the prequel episode. 1 week's time, we'll be discussing The Hunger Games. Just The Hunger Games. That's what the first one's called. Yeah. It's the Hunger Games series, but the first one's just called The Hunger Games. And it's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm enjoying the book so far. I'm, like I said, 5 chapters in.
I'm very much looking forward to this. These are books that I missed out on the first time around.
That's gonna be really interesting because you never read them.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll be able to do a prediction one because I think I might know too much about what some of the stuff that happens.
I feel like I know so little. I feel like I remember. It's funny to me because I read them and I remember so little. It's wild to me that you didn't read them and think you might know.
I think I might know like enough stuff that happens because I was on Tumblr while these were big.
Yeah,
that would be the reason. Another thing that I want to mention that I'm excited about that we are planning to do as a tandem content with this, and we haven't discussed yet, I would like to maybe put this on Patreon first.
Okay.
Is you teaching me how to shoot a bow and arrow.
You say me teaching you how as if I know how to shoot a bow and arrow.
You know more than I do.
We do. We picked up some. I did shoot bows and arrows as a child, but I never learned how to do it properly.
Well, you relearning and me learning for the first time.
That could be. Yeah, we could. We did pick up. We went and grabbed some bows and arrows from my parents' house, and we're gonna shoot them in the backyard. So maybe we can learn together because. Like I said, I vaguely know the idea of it, but I don't actually know how to do it right.
So we'll be doing that. We'll be getting some footage of that.
Yeah. We have some footage that we'll share at some point from the Ren Fair that we went to. There was an arrow range there, and we were shooting some arrows for fun. So look out for that on Patreon at the $5 and up level. It'll probably just be some short little videos or something. But yeah, that'll be fun. So. Look out for that. And in 1 week's time, come back talking about the Hunger Games. Until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else.
Keep reading books.
Keep watching movies.
And keep being awesome.